ToRCHI is an organization. It's a chapter of it's a Toronto chapter of the Computer-Human Interaction Group, which is a part of the Association of Computing Machinery. And ToRCHI started in 1983, before I was there. Mark, were you there?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, good. We don't know. Nobody was there. Diane, were you there? Other Diane? No. Okay. So, ToRCHI started a long time ago, but in Toronto, ToRCHI started about 1999, I think is the last record that we have. And we've been running pretty well ever since. For the past 10 years, myself and Harumi, wait, that's our president, and I'm the chair of programming. So it is my job to fill this slot every month. And we try to make sure that we have interesting, engaging presentations related to the user experience, human-computer interaction, usability, and all the related fields. And so we're really excited today to have our colleagues from Cineplex with us to share some of their experience. Usually before we start, we go around, we ask people to say where they're from, but there's so many of you here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ask for a show of hands about sort of industries and see, so they know who they're talking to. So can I have a show of hands of how many of you are in my class? Hey, these are students from the high school upstairs, and this is actually class time, so welcome. So ToRCHI, and hope you'll be coming back again. Oh yeah, by the way, the next event is the 19th of October, and it's at Mars, and it's Autodesk. So it's going to be a really amazing event, so you might want to put your name on the list because it's going to be limited seating. And the class has to go there, so you guys are reserved. So, how many people are in academia? Academia?
Yeah. Oh, I feel lonely.
Oh. Okay. How many people are in finance industry, banks and such? Okay, a lot of banking. All right. How many people are in agencies? No agencies, Trey? Okay, agency one, two. Couple agencies. Okay. How many people are in telecom? Come on, raise your hands. You can get the okay. Telecom. How many people are entertainment and okay, maybe. Yeah, they're like. Who did I not mention yet? How many people are independent consultants? I guess I can cover that. Okay. What other industries did I not mention?
Healthcare.
Thank you, healthcare. Other industries? Industries that I did not mention. What are you industry?
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity, oh wow. Anybody in cybersecurity?
Science and engineering.
Science and engineering, thank you. How many people are hiring? Raise your hand. Hire, okay. How many people are looking for work? Raise your hand higher. Okay. All those people who are looking for work, look back at the people who are hiring. Again, raise your hands. Raise your hands, okay. And tell us who you're hiring for.
The CDC.
And you?
Insured Connect.
Okay. It's an agency?
It's insurance.
Okay. So there you go. CBC Insurance, talk to them after. By the way, talking after, there is a networking event at the end, which is east of Brunswick. It's a pub. It's very close to here. On that, I think I need to introduce our guests.
I'm Anna, and I work with Cineplex. I'm usability and research manager, and I think you'll see a little of what I do through the presentation.
And I'm Mark Magnuson, Director of Interaction Design. I'm Anna's opening act. So I'm hoping I can support her pretty well. And so welcome everybody. It's good to see all sorts of different disciplines here and different interests. I'll put the plug in first. Cineplex is hiring for iOS and Android developers on their exciting products, which you'll see and hear about in a minute. We're here to talk to you about how Cineplex has fast-forwarded sprinting from concepts to actionable customer insights. So I just wanted to ask, who here has heard of the Cineplex Store? Deep Gamalik. Amazing, that's good. That's great. It's not this Cineplex, the movie theater, but this Cineplex where you can stream all types of movies, 8,000 plus, into your home by a multitude of devices that we support our product on. So here's just a few key facts. We are a premier destination for Canadians, so we obviously have won over some hearts and some minds of Cineplex moviegoers in the theater, and we're extending that since actually several years. I call it like Canada's best kept secret. Not as many people, if I looked around the room, quick math, it's probably like somewhere between 5 and 10%. So, as I said, we're trying to stand shoulder to shoulder with a lot of other streaming platforms. And so we do a lot of competitive analysis and a lot of research, which Anna will share in a bit. Obviously, we are integrated with this big loyalty program called Scene. How many people here are like Scene members? Awesome. So you could benefit from this if you wanted to. And so these are some of the platforms that are available. So enough about that. I wanted to talk to you more about some things about how we started. So about a year ago, Deepika Malik, our VP of User Experience Design and Research, put together a rogue band of UX designers from various parts of the industry, including myself and Anna. And we thought, where do we start? Well, there was a lot of work to be done, and we thought we need to ground ourselves in some foundational principles. So, myself being a big fan of superheroes, I thought maybe we can sort of borrow some of those superpowers to think about how we want to frame our product and around that vision. So let me walk you through a few of those. Some of those things are around amazing attraction. We want to be able to, obviously, all these principles we want to be able to measure, and that's how Anna and I, from the get-go, have really been in lockstep on trying to understand how we can actually measurably and actionably understand what users are doing. So obviously, we want to be able to attract our customers, and as well, we want that those elements that are at a glance and other sort of types of heuristic principles, gather their attention and keep those with design strong best practices. Obviously, the content, people say content is king, context is rightful heir to the throne, but content is really obviously very important in how we present that content. We have 8,000 plus movies. Obviously, we need to do some curation of that, so we need to be thinking around that at all times and see how that we can measure that through things like how many trailers are they watching, how many of our guests are reading movie details, how engaged are they with that content. Tony Stark is a good representation of being clever, and so I thought as a superhero, he would think about some of the things about an ecosystem. So you think about how there's all these different elements, Scene loyalty program, going to the theater, and how I tie that back to, say, one of our products called Super Ticket. How are all these things coming together in a very meaningful way at the context so that they can reach their goals anytime, anywhere. So obviously, familiarity across these systems. So you can think about parity when you, for instance, look at Spotify on your phone versus on the desktop. You want to be able to engage with that in a way that doesn't feel odd or out of disconnect with those different platforms. As well, obviously, this is one of my favorites, which is around engaging encores. So the best example that most people know of is YouTube. We want to kind of create that gamification of when you finish watching a YouTube video from one of your favorite YouTube casters, at the end of those, they always show you sort of what is the next thing that is related to that. So we want to be able to do things that are similar to that we're always looking for those best practices. So that leads to better engagement, time on site, frequency of use, which obviously then helps loop them back around in the journey. So if they're watching, say, a movie with Scarlett Johansson, then they might like her in their latest movie, and so maybe they'd like to check out and buy the movie for Ghost in the Shell, as an example. Without this principle, none of it really sticks together. So at the core of it, it needs to be super simple. So simple is not enough. We want it to be super simple. So that means that we want users to be able to complete their times on task, that search makes things very findable, that when they glance through, even starting at the homepage experience and they're exploring, that things are grouped together in really logical ways. And then rounding it off, we want to have this sophisticated service that ties back into our loyalty programs, so that it really makes sense for our guests, regardless of how they're interacting with us, that it knows them. So a hyper-personal type of experience. So some of those key metrics that we can look at would be like signups, logins. Would you recommend this to a friend? This is a metric that Anna often looks to. Scene registrations, so there's a lot we can do there. And obviously, as they say, data is the new oil. So you can imagine that that is very important for us to actually help our customers have a better experience. So these principles really tie back into our user experience process. So once we have that grounding or that foundation framework, we tie that back into our UX process. So what does that UX process look like? We're really just trying to define problems that really tie back to our customers. And we are really humbled by sort of like standing on the shoulder of giants, as I always say. We're looking to companies in Silicon Valley like Google, who have written a lot about Google design sprints. Has anybody here read anything about like Google design sprints or lean UX at all? Yeah, so I'm not surprised. So we want to leverage that, and we wanted to put it in the context of Cineplex and our products, so that it makes sense for us. So leveraging those principles and then tying it back into this other framework, which is something you may be familiar with. So I kind of like to say it like we have sort of a week in the life of what it's like to work at Cineplex Store. We kind of say on Monday morning, I get up, I brush my teeth, I come into work, and we have a design jam. And those design jams start off with problem statements. But even before that, we're working with Anna, we're working with other product owners to really have some inputs that help frame these problems, so that once we get into the design jams, which is like an active brainstorm. So I would say it's like a hyper-focused brainstorm where we want to have actionable sketches out of this and multiple sketching ideas out of this design jam. And that Monday design jam is really focused on having a multidisciplinary group. So we want to have developers in there. We want to have as many different perspectives so that we can understand where some of these kinks are that we can iron out and come out to a solution that then our lead designer can take away on Tuesday, work on iterations, prototype that design, and then we come to Wednesday. We bring it back to a design circle. Anna always attends the Wednesday design circles and is often involved also on Monday design jams. On Wednesday, it's really about getting that feedback. So we really want to get the feedback that allows us to understand, does the designs and prototypes that we've created ladder up to that design problem? But we also want to understand from, say, a developer perspective, do they think that they have assumptions about why this may or may not work for a customer? From a lot of different aspects, from technology, we have business stakeholders, and those assumptions then get gathered and they form the basis of some of our scripts. And then on Thursday, every Thursday, we do some rapid testing. So I'm not going to do any spoilers on that. I'm going to let Anna talk about that in a minute. And then on Fridays, the results of those rapid tests come back to our validation and design circles. So, speaking of superheroes, here's Anna. Take it over.
Thank you, Mark. Rapid test. So at Cineplex, we use several research methodologies. So from we're doing survey bots now that I'm very excited about. We should do a talk at some point. So we're doing survey bots, and we do online remote testing and card sorting, tree tests, lab tests, all those things. But the rapid testing that we're talking today, it's really excites me because basically we put everything, the whole process that it took me like 4 years at university in 24 hours. So I'll walk you through how this 24 hours look like. As Mark mentioned, on our Wednesday circle, we can see, okay, is this prototype solving that problem? And start the discussion of like, okay, I assume this is not gonna work or that's not gonna work. And sometimes at that point, okay, we need to test that exact feature. But sometimes we only define what we're going to test on Thursday morning. So basically, Thursday at 10 a.m., I go around the office and talking to Mark, to the UX designers, to the other designers, and sometimes even with the developers, asking, okay, what do we have today? What are we going to test? And we discuss, okay, we're going to test this. So I put together a very brief discussion guide, and at 1 p.m., I head to the Young and Eglinton Theater. So the idea is that rapid testing and testing in general, recruiting people to test your prototypes or everything, it's really hard and time consuming. Usually it can take a long time, and sometimes in the industry it could take like 2 weeks for a normal recruiting to be made. So how do we do that so quick? We decided to go straight on where our users or our potential users could be. That would be movie lovers. So they are in the movie theater probably, and we go to that, and then since we are both Cineplex, it's all a great arrangement. And we get people, so I approach people coming out of the theater saying, okay, would you like a free movie ticket to test this prototype? The session takes 10 minutes, and we get very valuable feedback on smaller features that we're testing every week. So we do have, we go through the legal procedure, so we have the legal bit there on the screen, but basically all the consent forms, everything was digitalized so that we can turn this so quickly around, and I don't have to print documents, sign them, and all that. So it's very high level. They're only audio recorded, so it's a little bit less heavy on that. The tools and assets we use, so we've tested from paper prototypes to actual builds. So it goes from a range. So sometimes we have wireframes, sometimes we have designed mock-ups that are clickable, sometimes we have the build installed on my computer. And we test on different devices so that if we're testing the app, we're doing it on a smartphone, on the website would be on the computer, and we have this infrared receiver there that we use the remote, and we kind of mimic the TV experience. So it's hard to get the TV. Okay, you're closer to the screen is smaller than it would be at home, and you're not as comfortable, but getting that quick feedback on, oh yeah, they can interact with these arrow keys and the remote, and it works, or no, this doesn't work with that type of interaction, we can get this high level and quick feedback and critical points on this rapid test.
Yeah, so we're not afraid of the fidelity or sharing our early work. So we're shaking off those nerves and it helps us be a little bit braver with that.
So that record, as I mentioned, we don't video record these sessions, but I do have an audio recording app on the iPad, which you just make a few notes, and the following day I can actually speed up my analysis. If I need a quote, I can see where the quote is, and I also take notes on the paper as we go through. So, and at the end of the sessions, we usually use an evaluation. We use the system usability scale and the UAQ, depending on what we are actually trying to achieve. The system usability scale we've been using more often and to get that score, just to have like a sense. As we test, sometimes we go through 6 iterations of a wireframe, and we see if the score is going up as we solve problems or not, like how that it's impacting the whole experience. Also, it's all on the computer, so the following day it's easier to analyze. And they have, yes, sir.
How many of those are you doing in that afternoon?
In the afternoon, between 5 and 7. Yeah.
So your SUS scores are significantly changing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not no statistics. This is like only a sense of the thing. We'll talk about that later. No point. So the high-level results. So basically, since we're such a young team, everyone was really excited about all the projects we're doing. So it's nice to be in a place like that. But like, I was gonna leave to the theater, and people would be like, "Okay, could you send me a message? Could you send me an email? Can you let me know what's the problem?" So what happened is that I started actually writing out these high-level results at night at 9 p.m. And with that in mind, because everything is fresh in my mind, so it's easier for me to go through the results and type it up and send it, and it speeds the analysis for the day after. So, and the team is happy, and I do get responses at 10:30 p.m. saying, "Oh, nice insight. Oh no, we should definitely do that to change this." So, like, people are, it's not that I'm sending the email and nobody's ever reading that until they get to the office the following day. So
it's way
really
better
nice.
than watching Netflix.
So bad. And I did have occasions in which I got to the office at 9 a.m. trying to do a screenshot to put in the report of things that were not working, and it was working, and then I'm like, where is this? And no, I already fixed it. When I saw the issue, I already changed this button, and I just changed this copy, and I'm like, oh dear, I need this screenshot. How could you do it by 7 a.m.? Like, so it's really nice to be in this, everyone in the same, fast-paced sense. And then 10 a.m. on the following day, I present the report and we discuss it. So it's a high-level report. It usually includes like the main points of like the critical things and the things that came up with those sessions. We have a discussion as a team and see the next steps, if we're going to retest the same feature improved, or if we can move on. We already know, okay, we can fix this, but it's okay to move forward. Now the learnings, and that's interesting what Ilona brought up. So basically, sample size doesn't matter. So if we're doing qualitative research, sample size doesn't really matter, and it's really hard, it was in the beginning, to get through this with the people like when we're presenting in the team. So basically it's like, okay, but only 3 people said that. It's like, only 3 people encountered that problem. Is that really an issue, right? And as I'm saying, 3, so some good days, we've had 10 participants in a day, in an afternoon in the theater, but usually we do average between 5 and 7, and there were snowstorms in November and January that we had like 3 people. There was nobody around, and we're desperate trying to get people to do that. And then how do we make sure that people know that even if like one of the 3 people had that and was a critical issue, we should try to address it. We should try to take it as serious. So what I did is when we presented the results, like one pager, kind of put all the participants together. So it's not like, okay, this was only tested with 3 people. Yeah, maybe that one in the middle there was tested with 3 people, but the variations are so small, and everything else was tested with 29. And sometimes our samples go up to like 50, so it really depends. The project, we could be iterating, and they're still seeing the same thing with small modifications. So that's what how we're doing. And today, and people after, also some parts of the team, even project managers came join us to the testing to watch it, and they realized after watching one session, they already know, okay, yeah, I get it. You don't need 10 people to say the same thing. It's not.
Yeah, and it's an amazing tool to build empathy very, very quickly. And as well, it's nice to be able to lean back on Jacob Nielsen's statistic of 6 to 8 users will get you 80% statistically of usability issues. So it's nice to be able to also lean on some of those stalwarts in the industry as well.
Yeah. Now, yeah. Sorry.
Do you take demographics when you're?
They take
demographics?
Demographics, yes. So basically, I try to actually recruit based on demographics. Sometimes it's really hard because it's quick, like they coming out of the theater and I have to approach them. But if I know I only had like, 20 years old, sometimes like school break, or university breaks or something like that, or vacation time, there was a lot of younger generation at the theaters. And if I know I got, okay, 3 of the 20-somethings, I go and try to approach people that are, so I try to recruit to base that. I don't get their age though. I write it down. I usually send the email, say like 220s, 330s, 24, like I try to get the, how roughly
and
how
you get the technographics too. Right?
The technographics too, yeah. So yeah, what's depending on what we are testing, what is important for us. So if we're testing like our TV apps, like which TV apps they use and all that. So we get a little bit of the information quickly in the beginning and then go forward. And then the system is a bit scale, as you want to say, like, so it's it's really small samples, so it could vary. We do see if things are really performing well, they perform, like this card does reflect that, but like there is a middle ground that oscillates, and also sometimes we improve things and Swiss drops, and like people started to be very attached to that score and come here, what's their score this week, what's the score this week? And like as you see there, this is the TV app that we were doing, the wireframes. So they started with 80 and then it went to 70, and people were so frustrated because we fixed a lot of issues from the 80 and how did it drop to 7? But we added the flow. So basically, when it was 80, it was just a browse flow. You go through the catalog and you try to find, go through the genres and try to find a movie to watch. And then on the following week, we actually were doing the checkout experience. You have to rent this. How would you go through the process? So you added complexity to the flow, and then you see that like how that affects your score. Like, okay, you know what? All those problems that we used to have, 1, we still have it, 2, we solved it, but there are those 3 new problems that we have to address. We have this report that is 25 to 30 pages long, right? And our senior executives are not going to have the time to go through reports that long. So how do we make sure that they understand that we are doing research, that we found these problems, that we address, and how is it evolving based on this data? So we've created this one-pager that you can see behind, in which we present roughly, okay, what was the problem? There's no severity here. So in the report is more detail. We have the severity of the problem, the issue, should we fix it, quotes, and all that. Here it's more like, in a quick glance, this is how it evolved, and this is why. We removed this button for this reason. We did like, so all those things that, and then how some issues goes across, like I think ratings was one that we had issues every week, almost, and it kept coming up and up and up, like, we need ratings, and we didn't put a rating, so it still comes up. And other things that we fix it, and then from one week to the next, it disappeared. It didn't show as an issue or shows like a check mark. We solved it. So it's just like a screenplay, a quick view for the results throughout. Now, when we were discussing this presentation, I thought it was interesting because we just been through this week, through this very interesting scenario. In which
it's not all sunshine and roses.
It's not.
That's what we're trying to say.
It's not sunshine.
There's some valleys.
There's yeah. So basically, what happened was that we had this lab test, and I said, okay, we can probably call this rapid iteration lab test, in which we had a lab test, and to be fair, it was an accident. This all set up for, it was an accident to start, because I had lab tests scheduled from Tuesday to Wednesday, and Wednesday. I usually do them 2 days in a row, then I can focus on analysis and go forward, right? And then somebody needed my usability lab on Wednesday, and it was a company from outside, and I'm all right, you can use the lab, and I move it to Thursday. So we have usability tests on Tuesdays and Thursdays, what kills my rapid test. So I was already very disappointed with that because I couldn't go to the theater today. But it actually brought something very interesting to our new, this world, and I think that's what we're gonna move forward with our lab test. Because on Monday, I sent out the recruitment email. So it's not as rapid as approaching people in the theater. but it's just as difficult because it's also very difficult to approach people in the theater and they say no, 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 and all that. But anyway, so what we do is like we send an email, a mass email through people that lives around the neighborhood, and we ask them, okay, would you like to come here for a session and check on one of our new apps? And so they have the email follows to a questionnaire. They say which time they can do it and all that, and then we'll go back to them and schedule the sessions. So we ran 5 sessions on Tuesday, and at the end of the 5th session, we sat down as a group and we said, okay, we have this major issue. So it's basically we've been testing a lot our golden path, and it works really nice, really nice. And it was, you know, we had all the check marks and our scores are great and all that. But then this time around, we decided to go through and do the whole process for the worst case scenario, kind of like going through the sign up and doing the checkout and all that, and adding our card and all the information. So from zero, from scratch. And what happened is that in this case, the TV there, the person testing, and it's not a participant. Okay. So the person that in this case on Tuesday were participants testing, they had to go back to their other device, sometimes with the phone, sometimes the computer, 4 times to finally watch a movie. And we all, like from the first 2 sessions, already knew something was very wrong with that, and sat down on Wednesday and have a design circle around that issue.
Which we always have scheduled anyway, so we're leveraging our process, which is great.
Yeah. So they did this circle. We kind of, there were like, we debating ideas and solutions and all that, project manager involved and all. And we I think it was like half an hour, right? It was really quick, half an hour, 40 minutes. We kind of had, okay, here, this is how we're gonna move on. And then there were development implementations on the web, development implementations on the living room, on the RTV, and they were made through like from 12 p.m. to hope 5. Some people might have stayed a little bit longer, but today when I got there at 8 a.m. for my first session, we had a redesign. And from the 6th to the 10th session, we could test this new approach, and we still have some issues, but it did work much better. And it was like, it would be a shame to get 5 people having the same issue, and then another following day with another 5 people having the same issue and that have no insights between them. So sometimes it's like nice to iterate between them. So tomorrow I'll present the high-level results and we discuss it, but this was mainly our rapid test iteration. So, oh, and sorry, I skipped the...
Oh yeah, and there we go.
There. So Mark,
All right.
back to you.
So I mean, I'll talk about some of the benefits. I mean, I will also say in some of our design jams when we were starting in this process, I don't want to make it sound like, you know, it's somehow this amazing miracle that always works every time. I know we have a lot of strong voices within our company, and at the beginning we were, you know, we had some product owners would just say all the time, well, I think this, and I think, we have one product owner, he owns, like, if there's a gadget on this planet, he owns it, and so he is like over-indexing on technology, and he just knows every interface and every flow on every device. And so he has this this kind of like small g God lens on UI and UX, and so we developed this rule where we say, okay, you have to always start with, my assumption is the user or the guest, and then ... And this has actually helped also bring along that people on that empathy train, because not everybody can empathize with, you know, every situation, because we all have bias in various different ways. So let's talk about this. So what did we kind of learn, and what has been the benefits, I will say, so far? Sorry about this like gigantic list of like copy here, but I just wanted to share that we're really through this process and this rapid collaboration, really trying to add value for our customers and guests, and at the same time that also obviously adds value for our business. We're strong believers in that. Obviously, this really helps us keep pace with development. So agile development has been around longer than this rapid design sprints, and so this was really answering the call of that, and so we were able to do it in that way. Obviously, it embeds user experience research right from the get-go. So I've seen this work at other companies, and Anna and I were able to sort of put our heads together to figure out and kind of mash up a program that works very well for Cineplex. And I think if you're working at a different company or a different industry, I think you can find your sort of place where you can find customers. So obviously we're not saying, hey, just go to the theater and you're going to find something for the finance industry. But you might find it somewhere else. So just think about that. Well, how you can do your research and reaching out to customers. So if you're with TD Bank, maybe you embed yourself at one of the branches or a couple of branches. Shout out TD. I just happen to be a customer, so it came to mind. So obviously, that early cross-disciplinary input and collaboration is just like it's so like kind of magical, like to channel Johnny Ives, to kind of sketch out these ideas and really go for that sort of like multitude of ideas, and not all of them just like being edited before we even like put pencil to paper. And obviously we're focused, it gives a certain focus. We're kind of losing our fear of sharing our work with our customers. So this is, I guess, our version of co-creation in a lot of ways. And I kind of use that term loosely. Obviously that midweek, being able to do that like we did this week, through that sort of like, we wanted to make sure we kind of like share some of our, we were say, war stories as well. And then obviously those actionable insights, results, help dispel or validate those assumptions. And then we're getting a little bit confident in like what we're doing along the way, and being able to show that progression all the way up the sort of executive chain as well. So that's sort of the last part about that buy-in. And thank you very much.
So I noticed you said that you wanted to have sprints ahead of the agile process. So you mentioned you had developers engaged. Do you have like developers like dedicated to your design sprint, like because they're working on the prototypes, or?
So the prototypes are I would say, low to mid fidelity prototypes that are being done in Acture or other, depending on what platform we're working on, and the developers are just I would say that's part of their cadence. So they're invited to these design rituals, these UX design rituals. And so that's carved out as part of their time, and we have buy-in from their managers, and so instead of us sort of surprising them with it, and it's like that they didn't have any voice in this, it's making the designs and prototypes that much stronger. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And like, so you have like a design sprint then followed by a development kind of sprint, like.
Right, and the designers are. I guess there's that reciprocity. We're also involved with their sprint plan.
Yeah.
So we attend their sprint planning. So there's that I guess that yin and yang, or that reciprocity back and forth of having a voice in their sprint planning, and they're having a voice in our design rituals.
Sort of following on that, I just want to get a sense of the size of your team and each of the different roles in design and development.
Okay, so I'll go first. So I have two direct reports, interaction designers, and then we have a director of visual design, and he has one designer. So there's three interaction designers, including myself. We have a co-op that we have in the summer that we had this summer. So that bolstered a little bit. And then yeah, how big is your team?
My team.
Well, we're all part of fantasy.
Yeah, you are part of our team. No, but I think I am the only researcher for now. And but I think from a development perspective, it really, I don't know if it depends on the platform that there are developers dedicated to.
Yeah, and we're all well. We also, I guess, we have sort of a Swiss Army knife of skills. So, sometimes Anna is like, oh, I'm really curious about this, and she'll whip up a prototype based on some of the sketches that we've done, in order to that that we're getting those actionable insights within that weekly cadence. So that's amazing as well. Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was just wondering how, I'm jealous of the fact that you have such a great base of users to draw from and test with. That's so great. I mean, it's literally a captive audience on some level. But did you have a challenge getting access to those people in that way? And was there any resistance from upper management, kind of saying, we don't like the idea that there might be interference with the guest experience, and we don't want to blend that with the design? Like, how did you kind of balance that?
It was super smooth. I can't say too much because it's hard to do it. It was really, so basically the general manager at the theater was very, he really wants to help. And even when I sent him emails today, it's like, okay, I sent him an email, oh, I won't be going today. It's like, oh, okay, see you next week. He goes around and he offers us, drinks, and he's really, really excited to be helping another part. And even from legal and everything, Deepika and I approached several parts of the organizations. Nobody had an issue. And now they started to really like this idea of rapid testing. So other parts are coming to ask us, oh, can we test this later? Can we do this week? Can you piggyback on that one? It's being very smooth. And the audience is not only, even when we recruit for lab tests, so I've worked on telcos for all my previous life in the industry, it's like I had to have a screener question into which service provider you would not consider, because otherwise I knew I would get half of participants that would complain about their bill or something like that over and over again, and I wouldn't get anything out of my usability things that I needed. And for movies, it's like they get there, the first thing they look at me, it's like, I love Cineplex. Oh, thank you so much for inviting me here. I love movies. I watched this, and this weekend. And Do
they pay you to participate?
No, almost. No. So it's really we are lucky to be in an industry that people are very.
I mean, maybe it was I would say maybe the only lesson to be learned is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I think, and showing how it's worked for other industries. I mean, I worked at FreshBooks previously, and I also worked at EA. When I worked at EA in Vancouver, we went to the stadium. We were testing something for FIFA, and then we went to the stadium and we just set up a tent and talked to soccer fans. So you know, this can work also for other things. I think it's just a matter of, it's like start small, like, you know, and then, you know, maybe it's not every week, maybe start once a month and see and prove out the case.
Oh, sorry. Sorry,
I just want to know about guests. Like, who comes along? Who have you taken along with you on tour to join, to observe? Which kinds of, like, have you? Do you go by yourself always, or do you ever bring your designers or developers or exec level?
I've gone.
Yeah.
Mark times.
Yeah.
At the beginning, for sure.
Yeah. So Mark has been there, but like we do project managers. We had.
From every
from project managers from all platforms, they have been there. We didn't have, I haven't had the chance of any dev, unfortunately, but they do watch the lab tests, like they mentioned today, they watched it, and also we have, so that sometimes we have, because we stream to the meeting room, so it's a bit easier for them to step out and in, like the theater, it's a bit like, you know, we have to go, get the subway, you know. So, but we do have designers, all designers have been part. The UX designer working in the project, most of the time they come along to and they help out recruiting, and then sometimes they even help out conducting sessions if there are a lot of people. And I've done by myself as well. Like there were weeks that everybody's super busy or anything, like had other things in, and I have to go, and it's fine too. So it varies.
I was wondering what sorts of tasks you typically assign to the co-op. Is that just during the summer or throughout the year? What would they get to participate in?
So for the interaction design co-op, everything from wireframes and prototyping to also doing other things like putting together. Well, I would say I think it all depends on who it is. So this is the first time that we've had a co-op. So I always look to see what their superpowers are, like what skills they have. So the co-op intern that we had, she had some really amazing video skills and something that she wanted to develop. So she developed also some video sort of storyboarding of some of our journeys. But mostly concentrated on interaction design, wireframing, flows, and enjoying Anna. Both of the co-ops every week went because I think that's something that well, I can't speak for this program, but from the program that I heard about, it's not something that is taught in that way in academia. So. They enjoyed that, and I think as well it was another skill to show how easy or painful it is to recruit customers.
Yeah, Judy. Oh, sorry. Okay. Good. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Here you go again.
Okay. So just to get it right, so you do this every week?
Yes.
Almost every week. Almost every. We didn't do today, for instance, because today we had lab tests. So basically every Thursday, but sometimes I have lab tests. I'm running lab tests, and then I'm not able to go. But almost every week.
But I just like as a follow-up, isn't that exhausting?
The fact that you're here after your day of testing is, I think, an extra bonus.
Oh,
it's exhilarating.
I think we get used to it. I think it really you get used to it, and I think the first few weeks of testing especially. I get more tired when I test something new, because then you have to have like 100% like the attention and the things that you know. But when we iterate a lot, sometimes from 6 weeks, for instance, on that we had those wireframes, testing for 6 weeks, I already knew the tests by heart. Like it was so smooth, the process, and then I could focus exactly on the experience. I didn't have to focus on like, okay, I'm following my discussion. I already knew all the questions. So like. after a few weeks, you get so used to the whole process that it's just a normal work. It doesn't. I'm as tired Thursday as I am the other days of the week. It doesn't matter anymore. So anyway, okay. Yeah.
How do you decide which things you're going to test in the lab as opposed to having?
Good question. Yeah. So basically, what we do is as we go through the sprints and that process, we usually testing that feature or one of the features that were developed previously, or so we're testing small things in the rapid test because we only have 10 minutes to focus. We can't really have a whole flow. Like that's the thing, that the flow that we were testing this week in the lab is a complete flow. We have to go through the browse experience. You have to go to the checkout. So all those scenarios and things that could go wrong, or okay, you received this email with this promo code and how we're going to put this promo code in that. We don't have time for that in the rapid test. So it depends on the flows and how evolved the prototype is. And also, like this at this time was a build, like it was an actual build. So it's like, okay, so is the build ready to test? And then it goes. And sometimes I think this build I actually tested on my computer a few months back, but also just a small tiny bit. So that makes sense. Like, so small little features, we can test it, but on the lab you have a more holistic view of everything. So things that sometimes are not a problem in the rapid test emerge as a problem in the lab test. So it's not like, okay, you do this rapids and then it's like everything is great, because you might be testing things in isolation on the 10 minutes you have. So when you sit 1 hour to go through the process, things might go wrong, as we've seen this week. So that's why it's important to have those lab checkpoints, to have a deeper analysis. I go through the video. It's not a 24-hour thing. It's like, it's quick. We still have a turnaround of like a week and a half or so. Like, but it's more like I watch all the videos, I get all the issues we had, and then the report is much more extensive, and and we can discuss in more detail everything.
Yeah, I actually had a similar question, Sam. But how long have you been doing this process?
Since November, I think we started next week will be 1 year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we started end of September. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think end of October or early November was our first time, like for me, from a testing perspective, I think the design gems and all we started a little bit, because we got settled in, and then we started seeing how we're going to work together, and then design, developing the design principles, and all that came a little bit before. And then it depends. So if it's like a small thing, oh, you know what, this will make a little bit better, changing this to that, it's going to improve it, but it's like a level 1, it's not, people can walk through it and all that. That's going to go in the backlog and then fixed as when it's possible. But other things that are major, we always discuss, and it's taken very seriously and iterated. So I think it's really nice. We have a close relationship with the development team in this sense. Yeah.
In terms of like project management tools, stuff like Jira and Kanban boards, do you utilize any of those, or?
We're part of that process. We're using tools like. Well, I guess we're using like Teams for like communication, and a lot of the tools that sort of like Microsoft versions of that. Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning that you were measuring all the user that you set up for yourself. So how do you measure?
Good question. So a few of those, like effectiveness and all that, we can measure. So we do measure on the tasks, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, like the task was moved, or no, it took too long. If it's an online study that we measure the time, it's like how long it take and all that. But we measure. So we have surveys and daily that I monitor daily. So we have a feedback survey that pops up when you're browsing our site and all that. That like we see how so the people reply for the survey, and I read all the comments every day in the morning. So I take a look and see, okay, yeah, this is affecting, and we see things that we improve search. The search comments don't appear as much and all that. So we start seeing that, and every quarter we launch a quarterly survey, also to a sample of our guests, and then as it's a very long survey, and that's 30-something questions, and which we can get a little bit, so we know what we had that quarter, the improvements, if they had an impact or not. So then when we have a new app or something, we look back and say, oh yes, our scores were like, we're here, and so satisfaction score, recommend to a friend, and all that, like we have a very extensive number of questions in that we measure those things. Yeah.
Is that like an email list that you send actually the same set of guests?
No, so basically what I did, and I sent out one this morning, so if you have transacted with us, we might have received. So what we do is we get a portion of people who actually rented or bought anything with us in the last quarter, in the last quarter. So every quarter in the last quarter. So it's not every, the same. So it's really, usually people receive it once, sometimes twice a year, but it's usually once a year that you might get that. It might be in the list to get that survey. And we have a completion rate that is pretty high for how long the survey is. And we usually have 2,000 responses every quarter. So we can have a temperature check that is really solid and give us a little bit of an indication of where you're going. Yeah.
I hope if there's a disagreement or conflict between a very experienced front-end developer and your test result, how do you guys resolve that?
So sorry, if I have a
disagreement or conflict between a very experienced front-end developer, the programmer, and your test result, if they are different.
I don't know. I think I've never been to a situation like the designer. I was gonna say the designer. The designer we work with, he's adorable. He's really nice. But he told me that when I come here, it's like, yeah, say that. What was the quote? He gave me a quote that would be a bit of a revalidating thing. That sometimes I want something that it's not gonna look as nice a design as he would like it to be, but it would solve my usability.
Paraphrasing you, so that you're ruining my life.
You're ruining my life.
But no, it's really not that. There's not that type of conflict because everybody is sharing in the process. It's not that this UX process or rapid testing is thrust upon. Like everybody's owning a part of it, and everybody is an equal member of that. Of these design or these UX rituals.
Yeah, so we do.
Sorry, just to add on that, I found that the conflicts always happening between the interaction designer and UX designer. Interaction and visual designers. Because the team I'm working at, usually we're working as agile, so basically whatever I finish, I'll hand over to our visual designers. But sometimes they will disagree with my points, and they sometimes just do something new, without telling me. So I don't know if that ever happened.
Well, that is actually the whole purpose of design jams, is to involve visual designers. There's supposed to be divergence. That's how you come to the best idea, is to have divergence first of all. So then the interaction designer might be grabbing the sketch that is it's really low fidelity, and then running it with that. I mean, the thing that obviously it's like a donut with some things on it that say these are the rituals, but what that doesn't show is like the human side of it, of those side conversations that happen at the desk side of our visual design director, going over to Andrew's desk, or Andrew coming over to Daniel's desk and saying, "Oh, is this what you meant?" And then we're meeting again then on Wednesday, and then that comes out about, well, my assumption is that the user, and so always framing it in that empathetic voice, as opposed to I like green, or whatever, you're an idiot, like why are you making those buttons rounded, or So it doesn't become the animosity. It's because of the fact that there's that, first of all, that divergence, and then bringing it back together. So I think that's why you create that sort of, you create that forceful animosity sort of, or divergence at the beginning, anticipating, because that's like human nature. Everybody has different ideas of how they could solve a particular design problem, but as long as we're all focused on what that design problem was at the beginning, and also like focusing on not the most gigantic design problem, to kind of like solve the world's movie problems or something like that. So does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. How did you create the level of buy-in that you have across your teams, or did it come about organically, or buy-in?
The buy-in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we started off by sharing how of others. So in the same way that we started off, the same way that we do design jams, where we're as inputs into our design jams, we look at how are others solving these problems. We did the same thing with how are we going to work, how are we going to design in a rapid manner. And then we looked at, Google Design Sprints, Lean UX, how are other center of excellence companies, Nike, how are they doing that? And then it becomes pretty clear to everyone who is involved with that, is that, oh, okay, like, we're not just creating our own sort of mad science here, and, kind of like standing outside of what the rest of best-in-class companies are doing, and that, I think, then has really given us then sort of like solid ground that we all stand on.
And I think from even going back to that, the developer, the designer, or the disagreements and all, when everyone is together on the design jam, so everybody kind of starts working on the process together. It also makes everyone a bit of owner of it, so I have a sense of ownership, and there's popcorn. We forgot.
Oh, yeah?
So we are there.
You may have seen that in one of the slides, yeah.
Yeah.
There's always popcorn.
So we have popcorn, and everyone is trying to work to solve the same problem. So having the people, like developers and project owners and designers, attractive designers and visual designers, and me, like everyone in the same room trying to solve the same problem, actually put everyone on the same page, or at least similar page. So it's not going to be like, if we have small things the buy-in is easy.
Yeah, I mean, and people have obviously different personalities. I mean, we have one designer who I would say he's quite introverted, and so he had never experienced that before. So we created different things where not just one person sketching out an idea, then collaborating, sort of, sharing the same kind of like worksheet and jamming together on something also creates, I think, this good gel of how to come and solve these design problems.
How was it selling the agile process to management?
How was it?
I wouldn't say that Cineplex is completely agile. We're running 3 to 4 different development processes depending on what's being worked on. So I'd say it's still a work in progress. Agile has not been 100% adopted to this date, but we're working towards it. Even within the digital commerce group, we have 3 different product development models based on the platform. So we have our own developers for our living room devices. We're getting our own developers for mobile. But up to this point, we've been working with our partners on IT on mobile and on web. So it's kudos to these guys and to the product team. They are shifting gears a couple times a week, working with different development handoffs. So it's that's a function of the group getting started. We're the first fully fleshed UX team at Cineplex. So yeah, it's still a work in progress.
And in terms of estimates and deadlines, is that a challenge with management in that process?
It's always a challenge with management. I think when you have a young team forcing new process discussions,
you never are, at the outset going to get your velocity and your turn rates right. That takes time. You need to work together and figure out the right cadence, the right amount of rituals to stand up. So, for the Rogers crew here, I also came from Rogers, it took a long time to actually get the agile process set up properly, and then to
Like
be
a
able to
year
actually,
or longer?
I would say when I was part of the product development, it took over a year. It's a function of the team getting used to the process and getting used to working with each other, and also developers, product team, and designers actually understanding the value of an estimate. And so we're developers, they different things. You get one holding up a 30 card, one holding up a 5. Is that a skill differential? Is it just they want to insulate and they cover their butts? Who knows, right? So it's also getting used to which developers have supplied. But over that year-long period, or however long it's going to take for us at Cineplex, you get more predictability, and so that's where you can start getting more buy-in and comfort and confidence from the senior executives. From my perspective, as an executive, a new executive at Cineplex, I would say, again, still a work in progress. We get estimates that are rock solid, and we get times where I call it pushing the peanut, we're like just pulling the peanut, and we're so slowly forward. But it's not for lack of attention, due diligence, the right kind of discovery work. It's just a lot of moving parts.
I want to ask, what type of requests do you usually get? Like how high level it is, how specific it is? Is there any research required to actually decide on which feature that you're going to build in the prototype test?
So I'll have to ask you the question back because I didn't quite grok it totally. But is it around prioritization of which features to move forward first, or?
I guess it really depends on what request your spec team usually get, like how big it is usually, or is it always very specific qualities this probably you're going to solve, or is more of a high level one that you also do some research before you on the concept, and then you do the test?
I think I'm going to have to give like sort of a typical UX. It depends. I think it depends on the team. It depends on like the product that we're working on, and also it could depend on like where we are. For instance, like we might have to rinse and repeat on some of our design cycles based on the results that we got back on our Friday validation design circle. So that, this week is a typical example of that, where that takes priority over something that was scheduled for the next sprint because of the severity. It's also I think it's also depending on what like we're working on a new product from scratch versus trying to re-architect the account management system. I think it's really going to depend on how you go to the sprint planning meetings and you say, okay, we need to work on this first because that will inform our design decisions on, like it doesn't make sense, for instance, to say, oh, okay, the first sprint we're going to work on first time experience. That would be like designing the book cover before you even wrote the book. Like, so that's the sort of like, I guess that would be like the sort of like high contrast of like what gets prioritized, or a feature that is dependent upon a greater part of the design. So we try to work on the genre section before, for instance, we might be working on sort of, I don't know, one part of like the purchase flow, for instance. I guess one last question.
Sure. I was just wondering.
No pressure.
So if it's okay to ask about the product itself and how it's conceptualized, like how it came to be? Was it a response to the rising prevalence of like streaming services, or was that something that came out of research that you have performed?
I mean, that definitely predates me, because this platform, this existed before I joined, or even Deepka joined, or haven't joined. But I think, to be honest, it's like, I think it answers itself. It's like, if you think about how often you go to the theater, or how often you know friends, or family, or your grandparents, the trend is people are going to the theater not as often, or their movie habit and consuming habits are changing. But that's not to say that customers aren't going to the movie theater at all. They just want different things. So that is, I would say, that's part of this. And I can't, I'm not the whatever the CEO of far from of that. I don't know, Deepka, if you wanted to add any more color commentary to that.
Not really. I think Mark's right. The in-home offering predates the entire UX team that was brought on to really well woven into the Canadian, from a brand awareness standpoint, so that you think of movies and where to watch them, because people tend to think of Cineplex. And because their attendance has gone down, you've probably seen in the news too that Cineplex has begun to really diversify the types of business all within the entertainment space. So really, it's just about, if you want to go out, you want to stay in, you have something for you.
Sorry, Judy, you had a question before.
I did.
What is it? Okay, feel free to.
So my question was regarding your evaluation and how you're running these sort of small incremental tasks, and you have an evaluation based on that current sample. But then the next week, if you're testing something else, and then you're placing the evaluation, and then you have the shifting evaluation scores, I was trying to understand. It's sort of like apples to oranges if you're testing like, I don't know, like one functionality versus another functionality. So how is that score really being computed? But I feel like it's really a long question.
We don't compare one feature with the other. We compare the evolution, right? Yeah. So we do compare. Sometimes the flow does get more complex, and that's why I say it's still worth getting it to see where is the problem here and what insights can we get. It's not like, oh my gosh, we got it. It's below 70. What are we going to do? It's not desperate in that sense. Even because the sample is so small that it doesn't give us a true indication. But it's more like, okay, we have something at the end that it's a kind of, it gives us a touch of like, oh yeah, this is evolving, right? So you add functionality, but we're always talking about the same thing. Your whole intent on that thing, it was like, okay, you want to watch this movie, how would you do that? So yeah, I don't know if it answered, but anyway, we can go.
We're going to go to the pub
afterwards.
afterwards, so have an awesome weekend.
Thank you guys so much.